Hey, welcome back to Dr. Yeti Real Estate. It is your favorite real estate agent, Dr. Yeti, and I am back with yet another video. Okay, today we are going to be talking about if it's better to rent versus buy. So a few weeks ago, I had someone in my comment asking me to make a video about renting versus buying. Now, if you follow me on TikTok, if you've ever been on my live streams on TikTok, if you've seen any of my videos, I've talked about this before. However, I realized I have not made one video about that on YouTube, and what better time than now? Okay, so I'm going to be reacting to a video by Dave Ramsey. Okay, I have never seen this video. This video is actually 6 years old, and he is talking about buying a home versus renting. Now, the reason why I'm doing Dave Ramsey specifically is because I like his ideas. They are a little bit radical. He has similar beliefs as I do. He's a believer in Almighty God. So I want to hear what his thoughts are about buying versus renting. And I'm going to give my opinions about what he has to say about it. So let's watch it.
I've had a couple of these calls in the last little while, so I got to stop and address this for a second. Dave, the rents in our area are so high, so much higher, that I can buy a house so much cheaper a month. Not true. You're not comparing apples to apples. At least over a period of time, it cannot be true economically. And let me walk you through why. Because it's a basic concept. But, you know, again, this is a thing where we get scope creep, a thing where we get justifying, rationalizing buying a house when you're not ready to buy a house, or buying a house you can't afford, or buying a house in a situation where you shouldn't. Okay, I love home ownership. I always believe long-term owning a home is one of the best plans you can have long-term. But you need to do it in a wise way so the home is a blessing and not a curse. And this stupidity that's out there in the culture, including in some of the wonky think tanks, it's like, oh, home ownership is down. Americans are, the wealth inequality gap is widening. It's difficult to buy a home. Yeah, that's all true. But broke people, when they buy a home, aren't blessed. It makes them broker. That's why they call them mortgage brokers. And if a whole bunch of broke people buy a house at one time, you could bundle it and sell it on a hedge fund, and later on as a regular mortgage block, and actually crash the whole economy back to 2008. Does anybody remember? So it is not a good policy decision, not a good macroeconomic decision to force people into buying homes, or to encourage people to buy homes when they are broke. Now, once you're...
And you know what, though? I agree with this 110%. Every time I go live, on TikTok, I tell people, hey, listen, you should buy a house that you can afford. Don't buy a house just because you don't want to be, missing out, FOMO, or anything like that. Buy a house that you can afford. And affordability is not about, oh, this is a $300,000 house, I want to buy this house. No, affordability is how much can I comfortably spend every single month. If you join my community, you'll see, and it's a free community, the link in the description. The main thing that I focus on in the Finance 101 module is how to budget, how to save, how much you need to save. Like, money is important to buy the house, but it is also important to keep it. If you don't have the money to keep the house, what is the point of buying the house in the first place? The investment has to make sense. The ROI has to make sense. If you're buying a house and you don't even have the money to pay monthly on the mortgage payments, what kind of investment is this? And a lot of people get into homeownership and they end up being house poor because in their minds they think that if I buy a house, it's better than paying for rent. But you have to understand there's a lot of costs associated with buying a house. I've made so many videos on this channel talking about it, but a lot of people don't want to think about that. They want to think about, I own this house, I'm paying into building equity. Equity is not as simple as it seems, and you need to be wise and strategic before buying your house. And a lot of times, like, people don't know what they don't know. They don't realize, and I don't want to be rapping too much. I don't want to talk too much, but the point is, like, a lot of people don't even realize that they don't know what they don't know. I used to make my community a paid community, and I realized so many people don't even realize how much information they need to have before buying a house. A lot of people want to buy the house, what's pretty, what looks good, but not really thinking about the fact that this is hundreds of thousands of dollars that you're paying for in an investment. People don't look at a house as an investment because they look at it as, this is not an appreciating value or whatever the case is. Houses always appreciate in value. It may not be as fast as you want it to, and sometimes it may depreciate briefly, like, for example, during the season of C-19, during the housing market crash. But I promise you, over a span of even a decade, the value of the house would go up. However, how strategic were you before even getting into the housing market? But I don't want to be rapping. Let's get back to the video.
Ready to buy a home, though, and you're looking at rents, and you say rents are, $1,500 a month, but I can buy this house for $800 a month. That is just not true long term. And here's why. It could be true for a moment in a boom town where something's going on, like they struck oil, okay? I mean, you get in one of these boom towns, you could have that happen. But eventually a supply-demand curve in economics will take effect. And here's why. Landlords want to have renters, and when there is an abundance of renters willing to pay ridiculous prices, what they do is they start building rental property or buying property and turning it into rental property. And so if there's a house on the market...
Well, let me say this. Based on what he's saying, because I don't want to get too deep into it, I might have to rewind it a little bit. But if he's going where I think he's going, if you have a market where a lot of renters are in the market and are willing to pay extravagant amount of money to rent that space, the landlords are going to build more homes, right? And when they build more homes, it will eventually be saturated with a lot of homes on the market. And when a lot of homes are sitting on the market and it's saturated, guess what happens then? The home prices or the rental prices will start to go down. But I probably shouldn't have paused there. I should have just let him keep talking. But let's see what he has to say. I'm going to rewind it a little bit.
There is an abundance of renters willing to pay ridiculous prices. What they do is they start building rental property or buying property and turning it into rental property. And so if there's a house on the market on a street and an individual can buy that house and it's $800 a month, or an investor can buy that house and it's $800 a month, and he can rent it for $15,000, and there's an abundance of renters out there, is the reason the price has driven up. There's a shortage versus the demand. Anytime demand is higher than supply, prices go up. Okay, when there's a shortage on something, that's when prices go up, in other words. Okay, but what happens is the shortage corrects itself very quickly, because those of us that are investors, we want to tap into this hot rental market. And so we go buy a bunch of property and turn it into rental property, or build a bunch of property and turn it into rental property, which raises the supply back up, thus the shortage goes away. So over time, rents are not going to be double prices. of a house price, of a monthly payment on a house. Because investors that are willing to borrow money or willing to pay cash like I am will buy enough rental property to take advantage of the great rates of return that an overpriced rental market will do, and it will cause the rental to come down or the value of the houses to go up. And so rent always approximates slightly above payments. It always does over time. And so when you call me up and say, oh, I can buy 50% of what I can rent, no, you can't. You're not.
I don't know about that, Dave Ramsey. I thought you were going somewhere with what you were saying. I don't agree with that. I mean, what he's saying is not incorrect, right? What he's saying is not incorrect, but he has to understand that, yes, the rent prices are going to go down, which is kind of what I talked about before I kept playing the video. The rent prices will go down, but it's not going to go down significantly to the point where it's not going to go down significantly to the point where it's not going to be worth it to own a house. And even if rent prices go down, you have to think about the overall picture of things, right? If I'm buying a house right now, the cost of the house, he said $800 a month. The cost of a house is going to be $800 a month, right? Property taxes will keep going up. Insurance will keep going up. Maintenance maintenance will always be there, right? And it is your responsibility to fix anything in the house. However, you are building equity. I don't see, like, when it comes to like the cost of home ownership, I don't see why you wouldn't want to buy. For any other reason outside of cost, yes, there are many other reasons why renting is better than buying and owning, right? But in terms of costs, long term, I did a calculation on my live stream a few days ago, and I calculated how much would it be over the course of 30 years, because if you are buying a house, your loan will typically be a 30-year loan, right? Over the course of 30 years, how much would you have paid in rent if your monthly rent is $1,500 a month? Mind you, typically $1,500 a month if you're living in Atlanta, a 1-bedroom apartment, maybe a studio, right? As opposed to a house, right? So you're paying $1,500 a month for an apartment. Over the course of 30 years, that's about $580,000 you would have spent on that apartment. Versus if you buy a house, right? You may pay more than that 580, right? Due to utilities, or not utilities, maintenance, and even interest, right? You may pay more than that. But after that 30 years is up of you paying that $1,500, or maybe between $1,500 and $1,800, if you do it right, right? That's why you have to be strategic. You have to be very meticulous when you're getting into home ownership. It's not about, I want to buy a house. No, you have to be meticulous. If your monthly mortgage payments, let's say it's between $1,500 and $2,000, after that 30 years, you don't have to pay the mortgage anymore because you've already paid off the loan. And if you add on, like if you pay more than that $1,500, or pay more than your base mortgage prices, you can pay off the loan even quicker. And then all you would have to do after that is pay for your taxes, or potentially, if you want to keep property insurance, pay for insurance, and that's about it. So I just don't know if I agree with the cost analysis of whether or not buying and renting is better. I just don't know if I agree with it. Maybe in the short term, when you're thinking about maintenance and all that stuff, like, yes, that may make sense, but that's why you get something that you can comfortably maintain, like a townhouse, if buying a house with a huge lawn is too much for you, or even a condo, even though I'm not a big fan of condos, but that's neither here nor there. But you can do something where if you're paying the same amount, you can pay into it and build equity. So when we're talking about costs, long term, I would not ever say that renting is better than buying. I'm not going to lie to you. But short term, if you want that freedom, right? And remember, people always say that with renting, the least expensive thing or the most expensive thing you have to worry about is your rent. And with buying, the least expensive thing you have to worry about is your mortgage. That short term makes sense. In the long term, and that's why buying a house is a long-term investment. It's not a short-term investment. You don't want to own the house for 2 years and say, okay, yeah, I've built equity on it, let me sell it. Like, it's a long-term investment. So you have to be extremely strategic with it. But let's keep going. I don't want to keep rambling, but I don't know if I agree with Mr. Dave Ramsey on that one.
Comparing apples to apples in the neighborhoods. If you can buy, because investors would have already gobbled that house up and doubled their money. That's the point. And that does away with the shortage, which causes the economics to balance out. Now, again, there might be a 6-month period of time where that is not true. But long term in Missouri, long term in Boise, long term in Abilene, that's what happens. If there is a bit of a jump for one reason or another, very quickly it will even out, and most of the time it's already pretty even. Rent.
Another thing I'd even mention is you building equity from paying your monthly payments, but also building equity from the appreciation of the home. Your home is always going to appreciate, and if you're strategic enough to buy a property in a high appreciation potential neighborhood, then that's even better. I don't know, like, especially him saying long term. Like, long term, let's be for real, long term in terms of like financially, long term owning is better. Owning is by far better. I really wish that he spoke a little bit more on just the freedom that it brings and even the cost of maintenance, or even like deeper rooted issues than the cost of making the monthly payments. I don't know. Like, I don't think that's a good argument to say, okay, between renting versus owning. But there's more video. We're only halfway there. So let's keep watching. Hopefully Mr. Dave Ramsey has more. Okay.
Is going to be slightly more than payments on average because investors require renters to pay enough rent so they can pay their payment, or so they can get a rate of return on the cash they have tied up, like in my case. I'm not going to tie up money at 4% return in a piece of rental property. I got to get more rent out of it than that because I can make more than that on my money doing something else.
See, that's the thing. I agree with him because, sometimes you don't want to make $100 on your rental property, and you bought this house for a few $100,000. You don't want to be making a very minimum amount. You want to make the most amount of money basically when you have a rental property. However, okay, you have to think about bigger than the immediate effect, right? Right now, you may not be making that stream of income, but that appreciation potential is still there. You're building equity, right? You may not be making, and from Dave Ramsey, right, it may not be a good strategy for him because maybe he has a lot of other investments that are making him a lot of money. So it wouldn't really, be the best investment for his portfolio. But for someone who is starting off, okay, someone that is starting off, you may not be making $1,000 a month on top of your, monthly payments. Like you may not be making that ROI from a rental property immediately, right? However, you may be making like $100, $200. Sometimes you might even be in a net negative. Sometimes you may be in a net negative. However, think about the big picture. You are building equity. You are seeing this property appreciate in value, right? But it depends on your strategy. Do you want to immediately make ROI? Trust and believe, I believe that everybody wants to make an ROI immediately with their investment, but not all investments work like that. Not all investments will you see a significant ROI as soon as you buy that property. Not all of them. Okay, so I don't know. This is very interesting. Like, Dave has some very interesting views. I don't know if I can get on with this one. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna lie.
And so that's gonna drive rental rates. That's what we're talking about here. And so these are always going to approximate each other. Now, if you find if you find a house payment slightly less than rental, that would be normal, and it is not cheaper in that case. So let's say you have a $1,500 rental rate and you have a $1,200 payment. Now, that would probably be fairly accurate. Rent is always going to be a little bit more than payment. But you're not paying when you're renting to put roofs on and fix heating and air and fix broken hot water heaters. You're not paying the increases in insurance and increases in property taxes that come along until I renew your lease, and then I'm going to bump up enough to cover that.
I can agree with that. And that's why I say to you guys, you can always shop for insurance policies. Every single year, shop for insurance policies, because I promise you, you will find something cheaper than your current policy. With taxes, you can always appeal your taxes if the appraisal, not the appraisal, but the assessment comes out incorrect. You can always file for homestead exemption, right? Property tax increase is the price you have to pay for the increase in value of your property. Unfortunately, there's a price. Listen, everyone wants to make money from you, and they will make money as much as they can, especially with the property. So yeah, they'll make money from that property. And you can always do things to reduce your monthly payments. But that's why I always say to be extremely strategic before you buy a house, right? Look at that area. Look at, like, what the millage rates are for taxes. There's so many things that you can look at. And I don't think that you should, I don't know, but let's just keep watching. But I've made videos against being a homeowner versus renting. I've already made that. So some people may watch my videos and say I'm anti-homeowning, right? But I can't get jiggy with this one, Ramsey.
But that's the difference. Home ownership in a given year might be more expensive for you as a consumer than renting.
I can agree with that.
Depending on the repair bill that you end up having.
I can agree with that.
And so there is no mathematical excuse for buying versus renting until you're ready on the short term. On the long term, owning is always better than renting. So you want to get yourself in a position.
Okay. I stand corrected. We on the same page, Mr. Ramsey. He said on the short term, it doesn't make sense, which is what I said. But on the long term, it makes sense. We're saying that we're on the same page. We see eye to eye. Okay, that's my fault. I think I was getting a little bit ahead of myself. Okay, I was getting a little bit ahead of myself. So, yeah, sorry about that, sir.
As you build wealth and as you head towards retirement, that's going to assist you with a paid-for home in building wealth. But it does not assist you when you buy a home and you rationalize your little butt off just because you got house fever and your little friends are out there buying houses and your little family members are whining at you over Thanksgiving dinner about they bought a house and you haven't bought a house yet, and why hadn't you bought a house? Because I'm freaking broke, and I'm not going to be broke soon because I'm on a budget. I'm going to get my debt paid off. I'm going to get my emergency fund in place. So when I buy a house with a good down payment on no more than a 15-year fixed rate, on no more than a fourth of my take-home pay as a payment, then I'm going to buy a house, and the house is going to be a blessing.
Okay, Dave Ramsey. You know what?
I want you to own your house. I don't want it to own you.
He's right.
And too many people rationalize their butts off They got student loans that have been around so long they think they're a pet. They got 2 car fleeces sitting in the driveway. They got MasterCard. They've discovered bondage and American distress. All the money comes in and all the money comes out. And they've strapped themselves to a house on a 30-year adjustable rate mortgage. And it's some of the lowest interest rates in my lifetime. And I'm almost 60 years old. If it's the lowest interest rates in 60 years, where the flip do you think it's going to adjust? Up, dummy.
Yo,
Up.
You know what? I'm not gonna lie. That was funny. But I don't know anyone that's getting an adjustable rate mortgage like that right now. Like, I don't really see much people getting adjustable rate mortgages. But he's funny. He said if the interest rates are the lowest it's been, by the time it adjusts, don't you think it's going to adjust way higher than your current interest rate? He's so funny. That was actually pretty funny. I'm not going to lie.
Not down. I mean, where are you going from 2.9? 1.9? I mean, really? Is this your set of assumptions on which you justified buying an adjustable rate mortgage? That's dumber than a grubworm in a box of rocks.
But
that's stupid.
Adjustable rate mortgages are not that common right now.
Killed. Don't do that. But I gotta have that one with a jacuzzi and a skylight, and I don't feel safe 3 streets over. And we come up with all this crap that we use to justify, and all this peer pressure, the most expensive purchase you're ever going to make for most people, which is their house. Don't do that. Do it right so that you're
okay. Yeah, I agree with Mr. Dave Ramsey. I'm not going to lie. I was a little concerned. I was like, okay, what is he talking about? Like, it doesn't make sense that you would buy a house and think to yourself, it's more expensive. I don't want to buy this house. Like, that's not how it works. But then he clarified and said in the short term, it's going to be more expensive. And that is true. I agree 100%. When you're buying a house short term, like in the moment in time while you're living in this house right now, while you're not seeing an ROI, while you're not seeing any appreciation, your equity is not being grown that quickly, it doesn't make sense. That's why I always say that home ownership is a long-term investment. It's not a short-term investment. You don't just say, okay, I'm going to buy a house and like in 6 months, I'm going to sell it. You don't just buy a house and say, okay, yeah, like I'm going to sell it in 2 years. You're most likely going to be paying thousands of dollars out of pocket just to sell the house. You're going to lose money to sell the house. So if you are not strategic and you're not wise in how you go about buying a house and being a homeowner, right? If you're not wise in how you do it, you're going to be stuck in something that is going to be detrimental to your financial health. So anyway, I don't want to keep rambling. I am almost at 30 minutes, but let me know what you think about this video. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. I may make another video about renting versus owning because Dave Ramsey only made 1 point. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to this channel. Okay, I give you tips, tricks, everything you need to know about home ownership. Okay, but it's not just reactions. I help you, I guide you, and if you haven't yet joined the First Gen Homeowners community, the link is going to be in the description. It is free $99 for now because I'm still building the community. Okay, it's free $99 for now. But yeah, click the link in the description, join the community, and yeah, I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Have a good day. Bye-bye.